What's up, Guardians? You can call me Doc, and after publishing the final tier list in our support item tier list series, I wanted to make one last follow-up video with any changes or anything like that I might want to make now that you guys have had a little bit of time to share your opinions. In case you missed the end of the previous tier list, I wanted to assure you guys that even if I didn't react or respond to every comment, I promise that I have been reading them and taking your feedback into account. While I may not agree with every single comment, there were many good points brought up, and I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong. If you haven't seen the previous tier list videos or just need a refresher, you're welcome to go watch those. I'll link them in the description, and then you can come back to this one. Okay, I think it's time we just go ahead and get into this, so sit back, relax, and let's see what rankings we want to change. So we're going to be going in chronological order from the first video to the most recent, starting with our weapons. And topping off our list, we have Buried Bloodline. So this one I actually didn't have in my original weapons tier list and need to add. I thought I saw a couple of y'all mention this one. I know for sure I saw at least one. I think I might have seen one or two or three, sorry. And thank you for doing so, because I completely forgot about it, honestly. Without the catalyst, this probably would have fallen more under the honorable mention category if I had one during that video. However, with the catalyst, this becomes a fantastic support weapon. Buried Bloodline itself already grants Devour regardless of subclass, which is strong. But the catalyst makes it so that while Devour is active, you apply Weaken to any enemy you hit with this weapon. While we've seen many sources of Weaken on these lists, this is one of the best in my opinion. Plus the Devour allows you to charge things up like healing grenades, barricades, rifts, and stuff like that much faster. So for all of these reasons, I'm going to put Buried Bloodline in the A tier. Next we have Edge of Intent. And while I won't be officially changing the rankings of Edge of Intent, I did want to address the ranking and give it sort of an unofficial change. So I had placed Edge of Intent in D tier originally, and I do still stand by that ranking. However, I don't think that I elaborated on the reason well enough. The reason it's there is not because it's unusable. In fact, I wouldn't even say that it's terrible. You can get plenty of value out of this weapon. The reason I had it in D tier is simply because I think it's worse than the weapons above it. Realistically, like objectively, if you wanted to make a C tier argument and just have nothing in D tier, I would accept that. But comparatively to everything else on the list, I do still support the D tier spot just because I think that pretty much every other support weapon at least beats it by a little bit. So speaking of D tier, next we have the Navigator. And I will be changing this. The biggest thing I didn't take into account when ranking the Navigator is the ability to apply the Sever debuff using this weapon. When applied to an enemy, Sever causes an enemy to do a lot less damage. It can be pretty huge for high-end content where you're expecting to take a lot of damage, so for this reason alone, I am giving it a bump from the D tier all the way to the B tier. Seriously, Sever is like really, really good, and I completely forgot about it. Totally my bad, 100%, I apologize. Next we have Red Death Reformed. And I think recency bias kind of took over for this one. I had been using it a whole lot when I made that video. I originally had it in the S tier, and I realize now that having it in the same tier as No Hesitation and Tractor Cannon just doesn't really seem right. So while this is still a fantastic support weapon in my opinion, I will be moving it from the S tier just down to the A tier. Okay, that's it for our weapons. Next, we're moving on to our armor. So it seems like the only real issues people had with the list were a couple of the Hunter armor pieces, and this is totally fair, because I will be the first to admit that Hunter is my least played class out of the three. I didn't have as much expertise on Hunter as I do with Warlock and Titan, so I do apologize for not being more upfront about that little caveat. Even then, it seems like most of the placements were pretty fair, albeit with a couple pretty notable exceptions. So, Mothkeepers. This is the big one. The Mothkeeper enthusiasts really let me have it with this one, and I don't blame them, because I originally had it in D tier. I think my problem came from the fact that when I was ranking all of these armor pieces, I was trying to use a build that would work with them, but still try to rank the exotic as an individual rather than the build they're paired with. For example, like Lumina and Boots of the Assembler, right? I wanted to rank them on their own rather than how good they are paired together. However, I think it's also fair to say that Mothkeepers has fantastic build diversity and arguably one of the highest differences between optimized performance and unoptimized performance in the game. I should have done a better job recognizing that and taking that into account. So I went back and experimented a bit with Mothkeepers, finding builds and letting its potential shine. I also tried to go in with a much more open mind than I did previously. I think I had just kind of written Mothkeepers off, and I probably didn't take it as seriously as I should have whenever I was going through each of these armor pieces, and I'm happy to say that the Mothkeeper enthusiasts were right. And I am going to move Mothkeepers from the D tier all the way up to the A tier. Next, we have Omnioculus. So originally I gave this one a C tier, and I'm still going to stand by my C tier. But I do want to say that I'll accept B tier if someone wanted to make that argument. When ranking this, I was focusing more on the damage reduction rather than the invisibility itself. And while I don't think invisibility is incredibly strong, at least when it comes to, actually being in combat, I can't deny that situationally, the ability to keep up invisibility for longer periods of time can be very useful, especially in certain encounters, Gorgon Maze, stuff like that. I can see where having invisibility for a while can really come in handy. So again, I'm still personally going to stand by my C tier, but I will say that it can be B tier in a number of situations. Finally, I was going to have a section for weapon perks and origin trait tier, but actually as of the time of writing this, there aren't any changes that need to be made. Seems pretty much all of you guys were in agreement with that one. I think by the time I had made that video, I had learned some valuable lessons from the previous tier lists, so I was a bit more prepared and knowledgeable this time. If there's a huge change that ends up needing to be made, I may update this video, but I think I did a good enough job that won't be necessary, and I think I covered the major changes that people talked about. Well, I think that was everything I needed to cover. I know this was a pretty short video, but, I'm glad that it was kind of a short video rather than being a longer one. As usual, please let me know what you think of the changes. I think we'll probably take a little break from tier list, at least for Destiny, for a little bit. I've got some build videos coming, among other things planned for Destiny, so make sure to subscribe and follow me on my socials so you don't miss those. And I think all I've got left to say is that I've been Doc. Take care of yourselves, be good to others. Don't forget to check out the other tier list videos if you haven't already, and I will catch y'all in the next one.